Not all chemicals are bad. You like sugar and salt, right? We like our fresh fruits and vegetables. Well, some of us do anyway, especially when they look pretty. We like our stuff, cell phones, waterproof jackets, cookware, carpets, moisturizer, the list goes on. It's hard to imagine life without these things, but they can come at a cost, and how that cost is paid and who pays it is complex and challenging. The idea that seemingly safe chemicals could be toxic is not new. There was a guy named Paracelsus. He was born in Switzerland in 1493. He was a chemist and a physician. And he famously was quoted as saying, "Only the dose makes the poison." In other words, a little salt on your fries may be fine, but a lot of salt may not be fine. He's now known as the father of toxicology, which is a field that's focused on understanding the effects and detection of chemicals. Seems obvious, right? But do we think about these things when we're making choices about the products we buy and we use? How do you know it's safe? It's on the market. Someone must have checked that it's safe, right? Well, DuPont, a multinational chemical company founded in 1802, appealed to the public with one of the most enduring campaigns: better things for better living through chemistry. They weren't all wrong, but what they didn't share or entirely understand, and what the public definitely didn't appreciate for a long time, was that chemicals in our everyday products and manufacturing processes can cause harm to our environment and to our health. There have been many examples over the last 2 centuries that have uncovered these links between environmental exposures and human health effects. One historical example you may have heard of is DDT. This chemical was used to control insects from 1939 to 1972. It was regarded as a wonder chemical for decades. But in the 1960s, some people started noticing unintended consequences of DDT in nature, and much later in higher incidences of disease in exposed people. In 1962, Rachel Carson documented its harmful effects in her famous book, Silent Spring. This book garnered so much attention that it contributed to the banning of DDT in 1972 by the Environmental Protection Agency. Although that was a great advance for our planet, the story doesn't always end when chemicals are banned. Like many chemicals, DDT is considered highly persistent. And this means it sticks around a long time in our bodies and in the environment, and it can have lasting effects on the health of exposed individuals and even in subsequent generations. Even though we learned a lot from DDT, we continue to face new challenges, with one example happening as we speak in North Carolina. I don't know about you, but I hate it when I'm cooking and the food sticks to a pan. Clearly I'm not alone. The story of Teflon began in 1938 when a guy named Roy Plunkett accidentally made a discovery at a DuPont plant in New Jersey. At the time, he was trying to develop a new refrigerant when the gas he was working on polymerized, formed a chain of sorts, and this created a waxy, solid substance that we call PTFE, or what we now refer to more commonly as Teflon. Its properties made things stain and water resistant, and they were quickly recognized as having broad commercial applications. Within 10 years, DuPont was manufacturing hundreds of tons of Teflon at a new plant in Parkersburg, West Virginia. If you haven't seen the movie Dark Waters, it's all about that, so try to make some time to watch it. Teflon took manufacturing by storm, from applications with the Manhattan Project to electronics and non-stick cookware in homes across the country. Applications further ballooned with the manufacturing of what is now called expanded or ePTFE, and this was discovered by a guy named Bob Gore in 1969. In 1976, the first Gore-Tex jackets were made, and the rest is history there. So is Teflon bad? Not necessarily, but it is one chemical in a class of compounds known as PFAS, and these are used so commonly in consumer products. The risks associated with using them over time isn't entirely clear yet, but evidence is pointing to a range of health effects like immune, reproductive, thyroid, developmental, and other issues. Importantly, PFAS are known as forever chemicals because they're so stable and they don't break down easily. So when they get in our bodies or they're in the environment, many of them stay for a long time and they can accumulate. PFAS are of particular concern in North Carolina and globally. There's a company called Chemours, it's a subsidiary of DuPont, the same one that made Teflon, and they've been dumping a collection of PFAS into the Cape Fear River in North Carolina for decades. This is the drinking water supply for 1.5 million people in our state. The only reason we know about this is because an engineer here at NC State named Detlef Knappe and his colleagues were sampling water there around 2016. They discovered high levels of known PFAS chemicals, as well as a new one known as Gen X. Interestingly, as important as this discovery was, that publication sat idle for a few years until a journalist at a local paper picked it up. Understandably, the communities surrounding the Cape Fear River were up in arms and a legal battle ensued. Ultimately, Chemours and the state regulators signed a consent agreement in 2019 requiring the company to significantly reduce dumping PFAS into the river. They had to also reduce air pollution from the plant and test groundwater around the sites. Since that first agreement, Chemours has also been providing bottled water to people whose wells were contaminated with chemicals. There's still a lot to be done to address the many outstanding questions about PFAS. PFAS are a great example of how complex and important environmental issues are and how important it is to have so many different people with different perspectives and expertise at the table. We're doing a lot about PFAS here at NC State. In 2018, a group of us applied for a large grant to fund what we call the Center for Environmental and Human Health Effects of PFAS from the NIH or the National Institutes of Health. This type of funding supports research, student training, and expects that we work directly and in partnership with impacted communities. These communities, as is too often the case with environmental impacts, comprise many folks from traditionally marginalized groups, rural, minority, poor. So it's not just a scientific challenge, but it's an environmental justice issue. In the span of a moment, communities went from trusting their water to fearing it. Of course, they wanted to know, is it in me? What does it mean for my family? What does it mean for my health? We were fortunate to receive over $7 million to tackle the PFAS challenge in North Carolina. And the questions we wanted to answer were, are these chemicals found in people who have been drinking contaminated water from the Cape Fear River? And if so, which ones, at what levels? And are they showing any health effects? Are PFAS having negative effects on people's immune systems, which could lead to several serious diseases? Once they get in our body, do they keep accumulating, or are we able to get rid of them? And finally, how can we do a better job cleaning them up from our environment? PFAS contamination in North Carolina and worldwide is a wicked problem. To tackle it, we have a diverse team consisting of engineers, chemists, epidemiologists, molecular biologists, immunologists, toxicologists, physicians. We have partners at East Carolina University and here at NC State. So what have we done? We collected blood from over 1,200 people along the Cape Fear River looking for over 50 different PFAS chemicals and evidence of health effects. We found out who has chemicals in their bodies, which communities have higher levels than others, and indicators of some health effects. We found that PFAS is affecting immune function in different model systems like mice and fish, because we can't do these experiments in people. And this information will help us know what to look for in our communities. We're working hard to understand which chemicals build up versus break down in the environment, and how we can modify existing technologies to better clean water contaminated with PFAS. One of the most challenging things we face is how to report back to communities. The fact is, we don't have all the answers, and we aren't experts in communicating with the public. So we also have folks on our team who do this really well. They help us build relationships with our communities. They develop materials to explain the science in lay terms, and we meet and talk with communities to try to answer their questions. In June 2022, we hosted a meeting in Wilmington, North Carolina, one of the contaminated communities in North Carolina. and brought together over 300 scientists, journalists, community members, and regulators to listen to each other, exchange information, and strategize to better protect citizens and our environment.
The entire 4 years I was there, I was contaminating the aquifer system and at the same time drinking the contaminated water.
This is one of the most powerful meetings I've ever attended, and unusual in the sense that all these different groups were meeting and talking together. It's impossible to hear the stories of impacted communities and individuals and not want to work harder and together.
When we have a structure fire and all those chemicals are off-gassing from those products, we're absorbing that. We're taking that in, okay? So the harder you guys work to make sure that is not happening in those products, I'm telling you, you are making my job safer.
You can hear some of their testimonials in the meeting link I provided. Like Rachel Carson's work with DDT, our work and the work of others is paying off. In 2021, the head of EPA launched a new initiative focusing on establishing stricter drinking water standards for the most commonly found PFAS, increasing investment into PFAS research, limiting discharge and emission permits, and improving remediation. In 2022, new standards were published for Gen X and drinking water. As our populations and manufacturing and food production needs grow, there will be increasing pressures on industries to meet these needs. PFAS will not be the last environmental challenge we face as a society. The more we educate ourselves and voice our opinions and expectations for protective regulations, the better we will all be. I love working in the environmental health space because there's a place for everyone in the solution. Whether you're interested in science, engineering, social science, community engagement, public policy, etc. There are many opportunities for all students and all backgrounds and interests to get involved in environmental health work at NC State. Take it from someone who used to be an art history major in college. I hope you get involved and take advantage of the great work that's going on here.